But the most important resource of all, 100%, was... Hello, my name is Kaylee Watson. I'm a third-year medical student, and I took STEP in October 2020. It is now March 2021, so that shows you how traumatized I was by it. But I'm over my trauma. My STEP studying, I really went through every single source that I could, and I just about bought everything, which I do not recommend. Let me just put that out there first. I do not recommend buying all of these because, one, you're most likely going to keep bouncing back and forth in between them and maybe feel more productive, but you'll be looking at the same information over and over again, and it's kind of just another form of procrastination and not really learning. So learn from me and don't do it. So I bought just about every single STEP resource that you can get. I believe the only one that I didn't was Amboss, and that was only because I just didn't really know about it until then. But I did use UWorld, Sketchy, Pixorize, Kaplan, USMLERx Express, Pathoma, everything. So today I'll tell you my favorite ones about each one in general, and even how to use them outside of STEP studying, like when you're studying for basic sciences. So the first one I'm gonna start out with is Sketchy. I use Sketchy a lot, and I have to say that it did save me during my exams, actually. So in my opinion, I think I would rank it because it has 3 different ones for step 1, like 3 different sections. So it has micro, it has farm, and it has path. So I would say micro is phenomenal. Farm is meh, because I think a lot of them, they don't necessarily mention a whole lot, but I mean, it's a lot of information, so they're just trying to be high yield, so it makes sense. And then path, wasn't really a huge fan. I had it anyways, I bought the book and everything, but I just didn't, it was so much volume and it didn't make a lot of sense. And I even bought all of the books, and you color or you write in them as you go. As you can tell, I didn't fill all of it out. And I'm not sure if I recommend the books, only because I feel like I spent a lot of time essentially procrastinating. You know, I felt like I was doing something actively, even though I was essentially just copying and writing. I don't think it necessarily went into my brain. So if you're someone with a lot of time for studying, or if you're doing this during basic sciences, then maybe get the books. But if you're in your dedicated study time and you only have 8 weeks, I don't really recommend getting the books and filling them out. Also, Sketchy is mostly good for visual learners. So if you're not a visual learner, I don't think I would really depend on it, because there are things that are left out. And then next, I'm going to talk about Pathoma. Pathoma was a real lifesaver for Path. He does a great job with really going through the basics. Like in the beginning of a section, he will go ahead and explain everything that you might have forgotten over the last year, which can be good and bad, because sometimes it got kind of repetitive, and sometimes he would explain things that seem very like, of course, I know that, that's very basic, and sometimes he would just breeze through something that I just did not understand at all. Pathoma comes with a book and then all of the lessons. So during the lessons, he's telling you everything that's in the book, but also drawing pictures and really diving into everything, which is great. And there are really great images for each section. Alrighty, so next up is Boards and Beyond. I did buy I don't remember, I think I bought it for a year actually, because it just made the most sense, I guess. I think Boards and Beyond is great if that's maybe the only thing that you use, because it does have like the questions, it has the reading, it has him explaining everything. And I have to say that he did also save me whenever I was taking physio, because he is a cardiologist, so he's really amazing at physio. Pros of Boards and Beyond is that it's very thorough. You probably will understand everything at the end of it. Also, his videos really felt like, you know, that professor or whoever that kind of seems like he's just reading from the slides. That's kind of what it felt like a lot of times, and I can't I can't learn for like that. Whenever someone is just essentially reading from a PowerPoint, I'm like, okay, so I could have sat here for 10 minutes instead of this 30-40 minute lecture. That's what a lot of his videos felt like to me. But so it was kind of hard to find like the really good ones. Like his physio ones are phenomenal, but sometimes when it would come to other things like biochem or random diseases, I just felt like he was just reading off a slide. But I mean, if you're someone that learns that way, and then also kind of brings me into Becker Kaplan. Originally, my school bought us Becker, and then I think Kaplan bought them out, or they just switched to Kaplan. But Kaplan kind of felt like the same thing. It was very thorough, but I just wasn't, it wasn't going into my brain. But if you're someone that isn't a visual learner, if you're someone that's very analytical, then Kaplan or Boards and Beyond might be great for you, because it's very thorough and they really go into explaining things, but I feel like you could have just read them. I don't know. It depends on you. It depends on your learning style. My school also paid for I think it was an 8-week program with Kaplan, where you would be with a bunch of other students. And I didn't like that either, because if you found something very easy, I guess, or if you found something very hard, then the easy thing they would just go on and on about, and you would just sit there like, I don't want to listen to this anymore. But someone else doesn't get it, so of course they should go through it. But then sometimes maybe something that you're struggling with, everyone else understands, so they just breeze past it. So I wasn't really a big fan. I guess it's good if it's not your dedicated step studying time, but it was a couple hours a day for 8 weeks, so I don't know how you would fit that in. But if it's not your dedicated step study time and you're just trying to make sure that you knock out a couple hours of studying every day, and you're not really required to, I guess, and you just want to keep up with the pace, I guess that would be the good reason to do it. But the most important resource of all, 100%, was UWorld. 100% UWorld. Yes, yes, yes. I will fight for that one, because I just feel like everything else, you're just kind of getting things shoved into your brain, but you weren't necessarily using it. But UWorld was a phenomenal way to really apply what you're learning, and not just apply what you're learning, but every time they would really go into detail for why this question is right, why everything else is not right, and how you can pick the right answer next time. And I guess the only con for that is that it's a subscription, obviously, so you just have to make sure that you start paying for it within a relatively close time. I don't exactly, I'll look up how many months it is and how much it costs, but also I don't think I would recommend starting it too early, because then you're just going to give yourself anxiety. Like if you're in 3rd semester of medical school, I don't know if I would start it then, but if you do start it early, I do recommend going ahead and resetting it so that you can really see where you are, because I know for me at least, my percentage on UWorld was actually probably the most positive predictor in terms of my step score. Like they say that if you get a 60%, you're gonna get a 230 or something like that. I can also look up the conversions too. But UWorld by far, if I had to only have one resource, it would have been UWorld. Pixorize was something that I was pretty bummed out about, the fact that I really discovered it in the last 3 weeks of my dedicated study time, because it really saved my butt when it came to biochem. It's essentially just another visual learning thing. Like if you're a visual learner, it's fantastic. And I'd never heard about it until I went on Reddit, which again, Reddit is just a great way to really see how everyone else is doing, how everyone else is studying, what they're using. Pixorize really saved my butt when it came to biochem and also other things. I think that was the most really helpful ones, because biochem I just always struggled with. I could tell you all of the vitamins. I couldn't before, but I could tell you all the vitamins. I could tell you all the genetic issues. Genetic disorders were really difficult. I think it's difficult for anyone, because you have to remember the disease, the clinical representation, the little genes that go wrong, the population effects, just a bunch of things with it. And because it was a photo, I could just kind of think about that, and it really solidified everything, which was great. So I would really recommend Pixorize if you're a visual learner, if you're struggling with biochem. And they had more than biochem. I just really honed in on that. A big resource, I don't know if it's not a step 1 resource, but it's a lot of controversy, I guess you would say, as to whether or not to use it. And I feel like it's so interesting. It's the people that study for step, you have the Anki users and the non-Anki users, and the Anki users are the hardcore, and the non-Anki users are lazy, or they're never gonna remember everything. So that was very interesting. But Anki was great. Maybe I'm just not great with technology, because it felt like a lot of it was just trying to figure out the configurations, how much should I see in a day? Do I really want to see this? How much do I need to review? I've seen this 10 times, but I haven't seen this, and this is something I really need. So I don't know. I think that Anki had its place, but I definitely wasn't one of the people that really honed in on it. And maybe if you do that, it's gonna be very helpful, but I just didn't do it. Anki essentially is something where you have flashcards, if you don't know. So you have your flashcards, and what's really great though, honestly, that's the only reason that I used it, even though I couldn't really figure it out, What's really great about it is the fact that there are so many decks out there made by other people with these resources. So if you're using a first aid book, you can also use the Anki to complement it. If you're using Pixorize, you can use that to complement it. So I'll go ahead and link what I found below. A lot of them were in Reddit, so I'll link the Anki decks below. I'm sure that there are even more and maybe even better ones than the ones I found, but I did spend a lot of my time looking for those because they're very helpful, even if you just put them at the most basic settings and just hope that you see what you want to that day. And last but not least, we have the First Aid Step 1 book. I don't know anyone that doesn't have this book. It's definitely a staple, but honestly, in terms of step studying, I don't know, because I just felt like I wasn't really learning, and I wasn't really, because that's what I did in the first 2 weeks. I did that for the first 2 weeks. I was like, okay, I need to read 11 pages a day. I need to do this many pages, and then I'm gonna know everything. And it just was like, I would sit there and read it, but then it would go right over my head. Like I felt like I wasn't learning at all. And then, but I was doing UWorld questions, and I felt like I was really learning with UWorld, because that's where you're applying it. Or, I mean, if I read something from First Aid and then I saw it on UWorld, I would think to myself, like, I know I read this, but I have absolutely no idea how to apply it. You know, I have no idea how to use this information to answer this question. And that happened a lot. And I don't know why and I don't know how, but I just feel like First Aid was not good at kind of helping you answer questions. You know, it was good for putting knowledge into your brain if you just want to know things, but not necessarily for answering a question, which is what step 1 is. So, but First Aid is really great for basic sciences or the first 2 years of medical school, because what I would do essentially is I would look at the title of whatever lesson that we have that day, and then I would go to First Aid and look it up. And then I would kind of just get the basics through First Aid, which was great, because I feel like a lot of times, you know, these professors have their doctorate in whatever you're learning. So they know just about everything, and they tend to skip right to the hard part. So I would use First Aid to really get a basic understanding and then jump into it. And before, when I didn't do that, I just really felt like so lost, like they were just trying to explain all the little details and I didn't even understand. It felt like they were speaking a different language. So whenever I read First Aid, had a basic understanding, then I could listen to them, or then I could at least read the PowerPoint without being confused. So First Aid helped a lot with that. One I forgot to mention in the video is Osmosis. A lot of people bought it in their first or second year because it has study plans, flashcards, and questions. It's also very visual when they are reviewing or teaching content. I liked it quite a bit for embryology since I struggled finding good resources for that. I listened to it like the night before. So, disclaimer, these are kind of my opinions and how I felt while I was studying and using these resources. So if you don't agree, you don't agree, and that's perfectly fine. But I mean, I feel like I want to give you something more than what you see on their website, because they're obviously trying to sell to you, and I'm receiving no money from this video. I just felt like whenever I was going into the step studying world and trying to find all these resources, I just felt so lost, so I literally just bought all of them. So now I'm gonna go through my list of 1 to 10, 1 being the one that I really think everyone needs, and 10 being the one that I've had absolutely no use for. So number 1 being UWorld. I feel like just about every YouTube video says that, and then also you saw it coming, I praised it earlier, but I think that if you don't do UWorld, I don't know how you're gonna make it. UWorld really built my stamina for whenever I was about to take the exam or whenever I was taking the exam. I think that's the only reason that I didn't experience a lot of fatigue whenever I was taking step 1. Like I felt, you know, after the 5th block, you're tired, but I feel like because I sat there and did Euro questions all day, every day for the last like week or so, I had some stamina, and I learned like I needed this much brain power to function at this level. And I know there's a lot of Q banks out there. I know that you're gonna have your own preference. I just really felt like UWorld, and UWorld has like a really good record. A lot of medical schools, medical students use it. So it seems like they're just the best of the best. And then number 2 for me was Sketchy. And that's mostly because I feel like it helped me not only with STEP, it also helped me a lot with school. I don't think I would have gotten through micro or fundamentals 2 in general if I didn't have it, because it was great for learning the basics. Or like I feel like even now when I am talking to a physician and they're talking about medications, I'm trying to picture in my head, like, was there a cat there? Was there a, so, I mean, it carries with you, even though I don't technically need these. I mean, I still have, like, this is my micro, but I have the farm book as well, because I think I'll use them for a very long time. Just because I'm a visual learner, it really sticks with me. It helps me differentiate, like, okay, this medication will have this side effect, or I should, like, it also helps me group medications together. And then same with micro. It felt kind of like, and I think a lot of people agree with this, but it feels kind of like a break for your brain after doing all those questions, after reading so much. You know, it feels kind of like you're watching cartoons, or, you know, it just doesn't seem to physically hurt your brain as much. I know quite a few people that rather than having a break for lunch, which I don't really recommend this either, but rather than having a break for lunch, they would just watch Sketchy videos. So now that I have brought up Sketchy so much, Sketchy and UWorld, I can talk about Pixorize too, because it's kind of the same thing as Sketchy, but just I liked it way better. Oh, I think Sketchy has biochem now that I think about it. I didn't really look at it, but I know that Pixorize was just a godsend in the last week or so. Like, it wasn't the last week, but and that's funny because I was doing the Anki version a lot, and that really was fantastic doing the Anki. And they have a YouTube too if you just want to check out Pixorize. Oh, and Sketchy too. Like, if you just want a little taste of each one of these, then the Sketchy has a YouTube, and so does Pixorize. So if you just want to try them out first before you really spend your money, I know that Pixorize is really great for the biochem. That's what I use it for, but they have other things too. Because before Pixorize, I really could not remember. I was having such a hard time going back because it was my first semester. You learn a lot of those things, a lot of the biochem things your first semester of med school, and now you're a year and a half later and you're trying to pull all these little baby details. Like, oh my gosh, like thinking about like how it helped me so much with the cycles. It did so much. It helped me so much with the cycles. And also, I remember thinking about how I was kind of frustrated with Pixorize at one point. Like, I was like, I don't need to know this. This is a random disease. Like, it was like eye cell or owl dace reductase. It was something like that. And I was like, there's no way. I don't need to know this. I know that this was one sentence in first aid, and I know I have never had a question of this on UWorld. So I don't want to learn this. And I shit you not, there were literally 2 or 3 questions of that. Like, it was, I only saw this material on Pixorize, and it was me wanting to physically fight Pixorize for trying to shove more stuff into my brain that I didn't think was necessary. So they are very good at giving you the basics of everything, like these, like the Sketchy and Pixorize and Pathoma. So even if you're not a visual learner, it's great. And then, okay, so number 4, Pathoma. I don't think Pathoma is for visual people. He explains everything very well and draws out a picture, but it's more of like those pictures that you see in the textbook of like, here's a cell and this protein goes over here. So it's not anything where like you have to memorize a photo. He's very good at explaining everything. And then number 5 is Anki. I really enjoyed Anki. Again, the only reason it's not higher on the list, it's not number 1 like the Anki junkies. The only reason is mostly because I just couldn't quite figure it out. And sometimes it would give me so much anxiety whenever I had 100 questions or 100 cards for that day, or I was behind by 200, and like it just seemed like it piled on, and I just felt like I would spend hours on there. And you're learning the entire time, yes, but it's just such a large quantity that you have to be on top of, and if you miss one day, then you got to spend another hour or 2 the next day. So I just kind of very quickly fell behind, and then I couldn't take it seriously after that. If you're someone that really needs something to tell you, hey, get on top of it, you missed yesterday, and that doesn't mean you can slack, that means you have to be twice as on top of it today, then if you're someone that needs that, then Anki's probably better. But I do know people that basically strictly did Anki and UWorld, and that was it. It's great because Anki has essentially all of those resources combined. Like, you can get like UWorld questions on Anki, you can get Pixorize on Anki, Sketchy on Anki. So a lot of people don't even pay for all of these resources, they just use Anki instead of paying for that. And then I mean, that works, I guess. I mean, it kind of screws over the company, but meh, I'm sure they're fine. And then number 7 is first aid. I know it's probably relatively low compared to how everyone else kind of thinks of it, but I mean, I feel like I put it higher too, because, or higher than, honestly, I would almost put it at 10 because it definitely didn't help me for STEP. It helped me more for basic sciences. But first aid kind of feels like the center of like the resources of studying. Because if you look at like Boards and Beyond, they'll tell you, okay, read these pages beforehand. So like other resources will reference first aid because it's just a quick way to get the basics. And then number 8 is Boards and Beyond. I bought it early on because I had to, like I bought it in my second semester, and that's when it really helped me for physio. And that's when I really use it a lot for cardio, palm, renal, all that was fantastic. But once I got to STEP studying time, But maybe if you only want to stick with one thing and you are someone that likes to be taught to, I just don't like to be taught. That sounds really dumb, like I don't like to be taught, but I hopefully you know what I mean when I say that. But it just felt like I was kind of just being spoken to. It was this guy reading his slides, and that was the majority of it. But I mean, it was still good information. Like, he spent a lot of time on these slides, I'm sure that he put a lot of work into it. His team, they put a lot of work into the slides, so I'm sure that they were very thorough. Like, if you want to get a high score, then, and you have a lot of time, then it's probably maybe your best shot, because he goes into very deep detail, like probably more than I would be able to put into my brain, but he does a great job. Now on to RX Express. I put that as number 9. So, I mean, I bought it, didn't really use it. I use it every once in a while just because I was like, I spent money on this, I should use this. But I know that you're supposed to use it to complement first aid, and first aid and I weren't really friends. So to have that just didn't really help. Like, they would ask me a question that I hadn't reviewed yet, and I would just sit there and be like, okay, I guess I'm an idiot. Like, I feel like they made me feel dumb, but I just wasn't really learning a whole lot. I mean, if you are someone that is going the first aid route, it makes a lot of sense to use RX Express, because they do go into greater detail, essentially. Like, if first aid is the basics, they kind of just go in and tell you even more about that. But if you're already not really comfortable with it, I don't think they make you more comfortable. But there are also a lot of people, that had just graduated, and they all kind of had their different teaching styles. So one might be a little bit more basic, one might be more informative, and one might make you feel like you don't know anything, like I felt. Yeah, that's why I have it as number 9. And number 10 was Kaplan, because I really got absolutely no use out of it. I downloaded their books, and that was it. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope that I was some form of help to you and that you can kind of maybe go to these resources now and not be so scared of them, or maybe have a better idea of whether or not you actually would like to spend the money on them, because I spent a lot of money on them, and there has to be a reason for it, and this video is the reason. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe for more videos like this. I post about 3 times a month, and I post things like the day in the life. I post STEP videos. I post being in COVID. I have a lot of videos out right now, and I'm planning on posting even more. So if you want to see fun and informative videos on a regular basis, please go ahead and do that. And then comment so I can say hi. So disclaimer, I